I found the photo album while cleaning out the attic on the anniversary of my father's death, which already tells you what kind of headspace I was in. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for what I discovered tucked behind the last page. A single envelope, my name written in handwriting I knew better than my own, and inside a confession that would burn my entire world to ash. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it really started. Not to that moment in the attic, not to the envelope, but to 15 years earlier to a dilapidated basketball court in Portland, Oregon, where I met the person who would become both my brother and my destroyer. My name is Cameron Hayes, and before everything went to hell, I genuinely believed I understood what friendship meant. I was 17 when Elliot Brennan moved into the house 3 doors down from mine in southeast Portland. It was late August, the kind of humid evening where the air feels
thick enough to chew, and I was shooting hoops alone like I did most nights. My parents had just finalized their divorce. My older sister had left for college in Boston, and I was essentially living in a house with 2 ghosts who happened to share my last name. The basketball court was my sanctuary. A cracked concrete slab behind the elementary school, hoop bent at a slight angle from years of kids hanging on the rim, weeds growing through every crack. It was ugly and perfect, and mine. That's where I first saw him. Elliot showed up without introduction, just walked onto the court with this beat-up leather ball tucked under his arm and said, 1-on-1 to 15. I remember studying him for a moment. He was tall, taller than me by maybe 2 inches, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and these intensely bright green eyes that seemed to notice everything. He wore a faded Nirvana t-shirt and jeans with holes in both knees. Everything about him screamed, I don't give a
fuck. But his eyes told a different story. They were searching, almost desperate. I recognized that look because I saw it in my own mirror every morning. Sure, I said, and tossed him the ball. We played until the streetlights came on, then kept playing in their orange glow until we were both drenched in sweat and laughing so hard we could barely breathe. He beat me 15-13, but only because I fouled him on what would have been the tying shot. You play dirty, he said, grinning as he retrieved the ball. You noticed? I like it. Means you actually want to win. We sat on the curb afterward, sharing the bottle of Gatorade I'd brought, and he told me his story. His dad had gotten a job transfer to Portland, some tech company downtown. His mum had left when he was 12, just walked out one day and never came back. He had a younger brother, Tyler, who was 14 and kind of a pain in the ass, but okay. I told him about my parents, about feeling invisible in my own house.
About how basketball was the only thing that made sense anymore. We should do this every night, Elliot said, standing and offering me his hand to pull me up. Every night? Why not? You got somewhere better to be? I didn't. And so we did. That's how it started, 2 lonely kids finding each other in the wreckage of our broken families. But it became so much more than that. By senior year, Elliot and I were inseparable. We drove to school together in his beat-up Honda Civic, ate lunch together, played on the varsity basketball team together. Though neither of us was good enough for college ball, we were decent enough to start. We double-dated, though neither relationship lasted more than a few months. We studied together, failed tests together, got drunk together on cheap beer stolen from his dad's garage. But it went deeper than activities. Elliot understood parts of me I didn't even understand myself. He knew when I needed to talk and when I needed silence. He knew that my sarcasm was a defense mechanism, that my competitiveness masked profound insecurity, that beneath all my bravado I was terrified of being abandoned like my father had abandoned us. And I understood him. I knew that his rebellious attitude was armor against the wound his mother had left. I knew he was brilliant, genuinely brilliant, but sabotaged himself academically because he was afraid of caring about something and losing it. I knew he loved his little brother Tyler more than anything, but would never say it out loud. We had this thing we'd do when life got too heavy. We'd drive out to Mount Tabor in the middle of the night, climb to the top, and sit looking out over the city lights. We'd make these grand, ridiculous plans about our futures. I was going to become a forensic accountant. Yeah, I know, not exactly sexy, but I'd always been good with numbers and patterns, and something about untangling financial mysteries appealed to me. Elliot was going to be an architect, designing buildings that made people feel something. "We'll both be successful as hell," Elliot would say, usually after we'd passed a bottle of whiskey back and forth a few times. "And we'll still meet up every week and talk shit over beers." "Every week seems excessive," I'd counter. "I'll probably be too busy being rich and important." "Fuck you, Hayes. You'll never be too important for me." And the thing was, I believed him. With everything in me, I believed him. We both ended up at Portland State University. Elliot's grades were barely good enough, and even then his dad had to pull some strings. Mine were solid, but not spectacular. We got an apartment together off campus our sophomore year, a shithole 2-bedroom in a building that should have been condemned, but it was ours. Those college years were the best of my life. I know how pathetic that sounds, like I peaked at 20, but it's true. Elliot and I hosted legendary parties in that apartment. We stayed up
until dawn, debating everything from politics to philosophy to whether Radiohead was overrated. We taught each other things. He helped me understand design and spatial thinking. I helped him with the statistical analysis he needed for his architecture projects. We also covered for each other's flaws. I was too rigid, too by the book. Elliot helped me learn to take risks and trust my instincts. He was too impulsive, too willing to burn bridges. I helped him think through consequences and build patience. We were better together than we were apart. Everyone said so. Our friend group, our professors, even the girls we dated. Everyone recognized that Cameron and Elliot were a unit, two parts of one whole. Junior year, I met Sarah. She was a journalism major with long auburn hair, sharp wit, and this laugh that sounded like music. I met her at a party, not one of ours for once, and spent 3 hours talking to her on a balcony while the party raged inside. She was smart, funny, ambitious, and completely out of my league. I went home that night and told Elliot I'd met the woman I was going to marry. "Jesus," he said, looking up from his architecture model. "That good?" "Better." "Well, shit. When do I meet this goddess?" I introduced them the next week at a coffee shop downtown. I was nervous as hell, though I couldn't articulate why. I think some part of me knew that the two most important people in my life meeting would fundamentally change the dynamic of everything. They got along perfectly, too perfectly if I'm being honest. They had this instant rapport, finishing each other's sentences, laughing at the same obscure references. By the end of that coffee meeting, Sarah was teasing Elliot like they'd known each other for years, and Elliot was giving her shit right back. I approve, Elliot told me later. She's incredible, Cam. Don't fuck this up. I'll try not to. And hey, maybe she can civilize you a bit. God knows I've been trying for years. Sarah and I dated for 8 months before I told her I loved her. I was terrified. I'd never said those words to anyone except my family. And even then, not since I was a kid. But one night, lying in her dorm room bed with her head on my chest, it just came out. I love you, I whispered into her hair. She lifted her head, eyes searching mine. Say it again. I love you, Sarah. She kissed me, and I felt something lock into place in my chest, like a puzzle piece I didn't know was missing finally sliding home. I love you too, you idiot. I've been waiting for you to say it for 3 months. We were inseparable after that. Sarah integrated into our friend group seamlessly, but she and Elliot had a particularly strong connection. They'd argue about art and culture, recommend books to each other, gang up on me when they thought I was being too uptight. I loved it. I loved that the two people I cared about most in the world were friends. It felt like
falling into place. Senior year, Elliot started dating a girl named Jessica, a quiet, sweet psychology major who was completely smitten with him. The four of us went on double dates, took weekend trips to the coast, celebrated holidays together. Jessica and Sarah became close friends. It was everything I'd imagined adult friendship could be. We all graduated in May. I'd already secured a position at a mid-size accounting firm in Portland called Bridgewater Associates. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a foot in the door for forensic work. Elliot had landed an internship at a prestigious architecture firm downtown called Skyline Design. Sarah was staying in Portland too, working at a local newspaper while she figured out her next move. Everything was perfect. That should have been my first warning. After graduation, Elliot and I got a new apartment, nicer this time, a 2-bedroom in the Pearl District that we could barely afford, but decided we deserved after 4 years of living in squalor. Sarah moved into a studio nearby. Jessica moved in with some roommates on the east side. We settled into adult life with surprising ease. Work was work. I spent my days buried in spreadsheets and financial statements, looking for discrepancies and irregularities. I discovered I had a real talent for it. There was something deeply satisfying about finding the one number that didn't add up, pulling that thread until an entire tapestry of deception unraveled. Elliot seemed to struggle more with the transition. Architecture, he discovered, involved a lot more grunt work and technical drafting than creative design. He was often frustrated, coming home late and complaining about his supervisor, about how his ideas were being ignored, about how he felt like a glorified CAD operator. Give it time, I'd tell him. You're paying your dues. In a few years, you'll be running your own projects. Easy for you to say, you love your job. I don't love it, I'm just good at
tolerating it. That's basically the same thing. Sarah and I got engaged on our 2-year anniversary. I proposed at Mount Tabor, our spot, mine and Elliot's at sunset. She cried, I cried. It was perfect and terrifying and everything I wanted. Elliot was the first person I called. You did it, he said, and I could hear the grin in his voice. I did it. And she said yes. She actually said yes. Fuck you. I'm kidding. Congratulations, man. I'm so happy for you, for both of you. I want you to be my best man. There was a pause on the line. When he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. Yeah? You sure? Of course I'm sure. You're my brother, El. Who else would it be? Okay, yeah, I'd be honored. We set a date for the following summer, 18 months away, which Sarah insisted we needed for planning. I honestly would have been fine with a courthouse wedding, but this was important to her, and I wanted to give her the wedding she'd always
Dreamed of. Those 18 months of engagement were a blur of planning meetings, tastings, vendor interviews, and guest lists. I hated every minute of it. Elliot, surprisingly, was incredibly helpful with the aesthetic stuff. He helped design the invitations, gave input on the venue, even sketched out ideas for the reception layout. "You're weirdly good at this," Sarah told him one night when the three of us were reviewing seating charts. "Architecture is just large-scale event planning when you think about it," he said with a shrug. "Well, thank God Cam has you because he's useless at this stuff." "Hey," I protested, but she wasn't wrong. Looking back now, I can see the signs. I just didn't want to. There were little moments, glances that lasted a beat too long, inside jokes that I wasn't part of, the way Sarah would light up when Elliot entered a room, the way he'd find excuses to stop by when he knew she'd be at our apartment, how they'd text each other constantly, sharing memes and articles and random thoughts. At the time, I told myself I was lucky. Lucky that my fiancée and my best friend got along so well. Lucky that I didn't have to navigate the awkward tension that some of my friends dealt with when their partners and friends didn't mesh. I told myself this even as a small, insidious voice in the back of my mind whispered that something was off. I told myself this even when I'd come home to find them on the couch together, quickly shifting apart when I walked in, their laughter dying just a little too abruptly. I told myself this even when Sarah started picking fights with me over nothing, my tone, my schedule, my failure to be emotionally present the way she needed. "You're always working," she'd say. "When's the last time we had a real conversation?" "We're talking right now." "No, we're fighting. That's not the same thing." She was right, but I didn't know how to fix it. I was trying to build a career to prove myself at Bridgewater to make partner track by 30. I was working 60-hour weeks, coming home exhausted, barely able to think about wedding planning or emotional availability. Elliot, meanwhile, had quit Skyline Design after a year and a half. He was freelancing now, taking on small residential projects. It gave him more freedom but less income. He was home more, available more, present more, available for Sarah. I didn't see it, or I did see it and chose to ignore it. I'm still not sure which is worse. The wedding was supposed to be in July. In April, 3 months before the date, Sarah asked if we could postpone. We were having dinner at our favourite Italian place downtown, one of our rare date nights, when she brought it up. "I've been thinking," she said, pushing pasta around her plate without eating, "maybe we should push the wedding back, just a few months, maybe to October." I set down my fork. "Why?" I feel like we're rushing. Like we haven't figured some
things out yet. We've been engaged for 16 months. We've been together for over 3 years. What haven't we figured out? Us, Cameron. We haven't figured out us. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means I'm not sure we're ready for this, for marriage, for forever. You said yes when I proposed. I know I did. And I meant it. But things have changed. What things? What's changed? She looked at me with these sad, tired eyes, and for a moment I thought she was going to tell me the truth, whatever was really happening. But instead, she just shook her head. "Can we please just postpone? Just a few months, that's all I'm asking." I should have pressed, should have demanded answers. should have trusted my instincts that were screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. Instead, I said, "Okay, if that's what you need." Relief flooded her face. Thank you. Thank you for understanding. But I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything. We
Told our families and friends about the postponement. Everyone was supportive, if a little confused. My mum asked if everything was okay. I told her it was fine, just wedding jitters. Elliot's reaction was strange. When I told him, he got this look on his face, almost like panic, but smothered quickly. "Is she okay?" he asked. "Sarah, I mean, is she having doubts?" "I don't know. She says she just needs more time." "And you're okay with that?" "What choice do I have? I'm not going to force her to marry me." "No, of course not. I want you to be happy, Cam." "I know, I am happy, or I will be, once we figure this out." He nodded, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. 2 weeks after Sarah asked to postpone the wedding, I came home early from work. I'd forgotten some documents I needed for a meeting the next morning. It was around 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, a time when I'd normally be at the office. I unlocked the apartment door as quietly as always, not trying to be
stealthy, just my normal entry. I heard voices from the living room. Sarah's laugh, the one that sounded like music, and Elliot's voice, low and intimate in a way I'd never heard it. I stepped into the living room and froze. They were on the couch, not doing anything overtly inappropriate. They weren't kissing, weren't even touching, but they were close, too close. Sarah's legs were tucked under her, her body angled toward Elliot, and he was leaning in, saying something that made her smile in a way I hadn't seen in months. They looked up when they saw me, and guilt flashed across both their faces so clearly it might as well have been written in neon. "Cameron," Sarah said, straightening, "you're home early." "Forgot some files." I looked between them. "What's going on?" "Nothing," Elliot said quickly. "Sarah stopped by to drop off some wedding stuff and we were just catching up." "Wedding stuff? The wedding that's postponed?" "Old invitations that we need to cancel," Sarah explained, but her voice was too bright, too cheerful. I wanted to call them out, wanted to demand the truth, wanted to scream and rage and break things. Instead, I said, "I need to grab those files and get back to the office. I'll see you later, Sarah." "Okay," she said softly. I grabbed my files and left without saying another word to either of them. That night, I lay in bed next to Sarah. We were still living separately, but she stayed over a few nights a week and stared at the ceiling while she slept beside me. Something was happening. I knew it with absolute certainty. But I couldn't bring myself to confront it because confronting it would make it real. And making it real would destroy everything I'd built my life around. So I did nothing. The next month was torture. I started watching them, really watching them, and once I knew to look, it was impossible to miss. The way Sarah's hand would brush Elliot's when she handed him something. The way they'd share these
knowing looks across rooms. The way conversation between them flowed effortlessly while Sarah and I had started speaking in awkward, stilted exchanges. I started coming home at random times, hoping to catch them, but I never found anything concrete. They were careful, or maybe there was nothing to find and I was going insane. I confided in my co-worker, Michael, during a rare lunch break. "I think my fiancé might be having an affair with my best friend," I said, the words tasting like poison. Michael, a veteran of 2 divorces, didn't sugarcoat it. You think or you know. I don't have proof. Then get proof. Check her phone. Check his. Hire a private investigator if you have to. But don't torture yourself with suspicion. Know for sure, one way or another. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid and I destroy my relationships over nothing? And what if you're right? What if you marry her and spend the rest of your life wondering, I couldn't do it, couldn't do?
Violate their privacy like that? Couldn't become the kind of person who snoops through phones? I had to trust them. Had to believe that the two people I loved most in the world wouldn't betray me like this. Then came the night that shattered that belief. It was late May. I'd been working a particularly brutal case at Bridgewater, a mid-sized company whose CFO was apparently embezzling funds through a labyrinth of shell corporations. I'd been staying late every night for 2 weeks, coming home after midnight, leaving before dawn. This particular night, I'd finally cracked the case, found the smoking gun. I was exhilarated, exhausted, and desperate to share the victory with someone. It was 11 p.m. when I left the office. I texted Sarah, "Big breakthrough at work. Can I come over?" She responded immediately, "Not tonight. I'm not feeling well. Tomorrow?" I was disappointed but understood. I texted Elliot instead. "You up? Want to grab a drink to celebrate?" No response. I drove
Home to our apartment, planning to just crash and celebrate in the morning. As I pulled into our parking garage, I noticed Elliot's car was gone. Not unusual. He often went out at night, visited friends, worked on projects at clients' homes, but something made me drive past our building, some instinct, some sick curiosity. I drove to Sarah's studio apartment 15 minutes away. Elliot's car was parked on the street outside at 11:30 p.m. when she told me she wasn't feeling well and couldn't see me. I sat in my car across the street for 20 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. I told myself there could be innocent explanations. Maybe she called him when she got sick. Maybe he was just checking on her. Maybe they were friends and friends check on each other when they're not feeling well. But I knew, in my gut, in my bones, in every fiber of my being, I knew I couldn't go up there, couldn't knock on that door and face whatever was
happening on the other side. I wasn't strong enough. So I drove home, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke. The next morning, Elliot came home around 9 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, still in yesterday's work clothes. "Jesus, you look like hell," he said. "Did you sleep?" "Not really. Big case finally broke. Was up late celebrating." "By yourself?" "Yeah. Texted you and Sarah, but neither of you were available." Did I imagine the flash of guilt in his eyes? "Sorry, man, I was working on the Thompson project, had my phone on silent." Until 9 in the morning? Crashed at a coffee shop. Lost track of time. He was lying. I could see it in every micro expression, every shift of his body language. I'd known this man for 15 years. He'd never been able to lie to me successfully. Until now, apparently. "How's Sarah?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "She said she wasn't feeling well last night." "Oh yeah? That sucks. Haven't talked to her in a few days, actually." Another lie. I wanted to confront him. Wanted to grab him by the shoulders and scream the truth into his face. Wanted to hurt him the way he was hurting me. Instead, I said, "I'm going to take a shower and head into the office." "On a Saturday?" "Yeah, lots to wrap up on this case." I left him standing in the kitchen and locked myself in the bathroom. I turned on the shower to mask the sound and let myself cry for the first time since I was a child. I didn't break up with Sarah, didn't confront Elliot. I don't know why. Cowardice, maybe, or some pathetic hope that I was wrong, that there was an explanation, that this was all in my head. Instead, I started building my case the way I'd build any forensic investigation at work, methodically, carefully, looking for patterns and evidence. I started taking note of their schedules. When Elliot said he was working on projects and Sarah said she was busy with the paper, I'd drive by
their locations. 9 times out of 10, their cars would be together somewhere else. Coffee shops, parks. Once a hotel parking lot, though I couldn't bring myself to investigate further. I recovered deleted text messages from our shared cloud account. Sarah had forgotten I had access. They weren't explicitly sexual, but they were intimate in a way that made me sick. Inside jokes, pet names. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again? This is so wrong, but feels so right. I found receipts in Elliot's wallet. Dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. Charges to his credit card for a hotel in Seattle on a weekend. He'd told me he was visiting his dad. Sarah had told me that same weekend she was at a journalism conference in Seattle. The evidence mounted, irrefutable, damning. But I still said nothing. I think part of me was waiting to see how far they'd take it. How long they'd keep lying to my face, whether they'd ever have the courage to tell me the truth. But a larger part of me was in shock. Profound, paralyzing shock. This was Elliot, my brother, the person who knew me better than anyone, who I'd trusted with my darkest secrets, who I'd planned to have stand beside me at my wedding. And Sarah, the woman I'd planned to build a life with, who I'd imagined growing old beside. They were destroying me, and they were doing it together. And I couldn't comprehend how this had become my reality. The final confirmation came in July, on what would have been our original wedding date. Sarah had suggested we do something special, just the two of us, to acknowledge the day, even though we weren't getting married. She planned a weekend getaway to Cannon Beach, a little coastal town we both loved. I agreed, hoping maybe this was a sign she wanted to fix things, that she'd realized whatever was happening with Elliot was a mistake. We drove out Friday afternoon, checked into a cute bed and breakfast, had a nice dinner at a seafood restaurant overlooking the ocean. Everything seemed almost normal, until her phone buzzed during dessert. She glanced at it and her entire face changed, went pale, then flushed. She quickly silenced it and shoved it in her purse. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, just work." But her hands were shaking. "On a Friday night?" "We're working on a big investigative piece, lots of late nights." I nodded, but I knew who that text was from. That night, after we'd gone to bed, I waited until Sarah was asleep. Then I carefully extracted her phone from her purse and took it into the bathroom. I knew her passcode. It was my birthday, which in retrospect was its own kind of cruel irony. The text was from Elliot. "I miss you. Wish you were here instead of there." I scrolled up through their conversation, months of messages, hundreds of them. My hands shook as I read through their affair in meticulous digital detail. It had started 6 months ago, right around the time Sarah started pulling away from me, becoming distant and irritable. The first kiss had been at Elliot's car after a group dinner. They'd both felt guilty, agreed it couldn't happen again. But it had. Again and again, they'd been sleeping together for 4 months. 4 months of lies, of betrayal, of them planning their encounters while I worked late, or travelled for business. There were messages about me, how guilty they felt, how they never meant for this to happen, how they both loved me but couldn't stay away from each other. "What are we going to do?" Sarah had written. "I don't know. I can't lose him. He's my brother." "I can't marry him feeling this way about you." "Then don't. Postpone the wedding. Buy us time to figure this out." The postponement had been about Elliot, about their affair, about giving them more time to fuck each other while I planned a future that was never going to happen. I read every message, every "I love you," every plan they'd made, every lie they'd told to cover their tracks. When I was done, I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it. I walked to the bathroom, knelt in front of the toilet, and vomited until there was nothing left. Then I washed my face, climbed back into bed next to Sarah, and stared at the ceiling until dawn. The next morning, I told Sarah I wasn't feeling well and needed to head back to Portland. She was concerned, solicitous, asking if I wanted her to drive, offering to cancel the weekend. "No," I said. "You stay, enjoy the beach. I just need to go home and rest." "Are you sure?" "Positive." I drove the 90 minutes back to Portland in complete silence. No radio, no podcasts, just the sound of the road and my own thoughts screaming in my head. I didn't go home. I went to my office. It was Saturday, the building nearly empty. I sat at my desk and stared at the wall for what might have been hours. Then I opened my laptop and started planning. Because here's what I'd realized during that
long, silent drive. I wasn't going to confront them. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg for explanations. I wasn't going to give them the opportunity to apologize or make excuses or beg for forgiveness. I was going to destroy them, both of them, methodically, completely, the same way I'd been trained to untangle and expose financial fraud. They thought they'd been careful, thought they'd covered their tracks. But they didn't understand who I was, what I was capable of when I had a target. I was a forensic accountant. I spent my days following money trails and finding hidden connections. I knew how to be patient, how to build a case, how to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. And I had something they didn't. Nothing left to lose. I want to be clear about something. I didn't make this decision lightly. I spent the next week in a kind of fugue state, going through the motions of my life while my mind worked through the implications of what I was about to do. I could have just ended it. Broken up with Sarah, cut Elliot out of my life, moved on with some shred of dignity intact. But that wouldn't have been enough. That wouldn't have made them feel even a fraction of what they'd made me feel. They hadn't just betrayed me. They'd stolen months of my life, made me question my sanity, made me feel like I was failing as a partner when the real failure was happening behind my back. They'd let me plan a wedding that was never going to happen, let me dream of a future they'd already destroyed. Worst of all, they'd made a fool of me. To my friends, my family, probably to themselves. Poor Cameron, too busy working to notice his girlfriend and best friend were falling in love. No, just ending it wouldn't be enough. I needed them to hurt the way I was hurting, needed them to understand what they'd done. So I started planning in earnest. The first thing I did was secure my own future. I went to see the senior partner at Bridgewater.
Associates, a hard-ass named Richard Gallagher who'd taken an interest in my career. "I need a favour," I told him, sitting across from his massive oak desk. "Name it." "I need to take on more complex cases, the kind that require deep investigation, extended hours, complete focus. He studied me over his reading glasses. This about the CFO embezzlement case? Because you already proved yourself there, Hayes. You don't need to overcompensate. It's not about proving myself. I need to work. I need projects that will consume all my time and attention. Something in my expression must have communicated the desperation, because his face softened slightly. Everything okay at home? It will be. Eventually. Right now I need work. He nodded slowly. All right, I've got a case that just came in. Major corporation, suspected fraud running into 8 figures. It'll be brutal. Long hours, complex analysis, tons of travel. Probably 6 months minimum to untangle. Perfect. When do I start? Monday soon enough? Monday's perfect. I threw myself into that case with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I was at the office by 6 a.m., rarely left before midnight. I travelled constantly. Seattle, San Francisco, Denver, anywhere the investigation led me. This served 2 purposes. First, it gave me legitimate cover for why I was never around. Sarah and Elliot could continue their affair without having to sneak around as much, which meant they'd get sloppy, feel more secure. Second, it kept me from doing something stupid, because left alone with my thoughts, I genuinely didn't know what I was capable of. While I buried myself in work, I began the quieter, more insidious part of my plan. I knew Elliot's career was his weak point. He'd always been talented, but lacked discipline and follow-through. His freelance architecture business was barely staying afloat. He got by on natural talent and charisma, but he wasn't building anything sustainable. I started subtly sabotaging him. It began small. A client he'd mentioned in passing. I happened to know the CEO through work. I mentioned casually that I'd heard Elliot was great, but sometimes struggled with deadlines. Just a small seed of doubt. Another client, a real estate developer, was considering hiring Elliot for a major project. I ensured that during my own work travels, I happened to have dinner with this developer. Mentioned how talented my friend Elliot was, but how he'd been going through some personal struggles lately. Nothing specific, just enough to make them hesitate. Over the next few months, I systematically undermined Elliot's professional reputation. Never directly, never in a way that could be traced back to me, just small comments, subtle implications, planted doubt. His project started drying up. Clients who'd seemed interested went cold. Contracts he thought were sure things fell through. I watched him get more stressed, more desperate, watched him struggle to pay his share of the rent on our apartment, watched the confident, charismatic Elliot start to fracture under the pressure. And the whole time, I played the supportive best friend. Tough break on the Miller project, I'd say. Yeah, I don't know what happened. They seemed really enthusiastic, then just ghosted. The market's tough right now, you'll bounce back. I hope so. I'm barely making rent. Don't worry about rent. You can pay me back when things pick up. He actually teared up at that, hugged me, and told me I was the best friend he could ask for. I hugged him back and felt absolutely nothing. Sarah was trickier. Her career was stable, not spectacular, but solid. She loved her work at the paper, had built good relationships there. I couldn't sabotage her professionally without raising suspicion. We ran in completely different circles, and any attempt to undermine her would be too obvious, so I focused on the relationship instead. I became the perfect fiancé, attentive, thoughtful, emotionally available despite my brutal work schedule. I'd come home from long trips with flowers, with little gifts, with full attention and presence. I'd listen to her talk about her day, ask thoughtful questions, remember small details. I planned date nights and surprise weekends away. I went to couples counseling, her idea, and engaged fully, talking about my feelings and fears and hopes. I was everything she'd been asking me to be, and it was destroying her. I could see the guilt eating at her. The way she'd tear up sometimes when I did something particularly thoughtful. The way she'd try to pick fights and I'd respond with patience and understanding. "I don't deserve you," she said one night, after I'd cooked her favorite dinner, despite being exhausted from a week in San Francisco. "Of course you do," I said, taking her hand across the table. "No, Cameron, I really don't." "Sarah, everyone has doubts before marriage. Everyone gets
scared. But we're going to figure this out together, okay? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Okay. That night, after she fell asleep, I checked her phone again. She and Elliot were still seeing each other, but the tone of their messages had changed. There was more guilt now, more angst. "I can't do this anymore," Sarah had written. "He's being so wonderful and I'm such a terrible person." "I know, I feel the same way. Maybe we should tell him." "Tell him what? That we've been fucking for months? That we're in love? It'll destroy him." "We're already destroying him, just slowly." "I need time to think." "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." I put the phone back and smiled in the darkness. They were cracking. My plan was working. By October, what would have been our new wedding date if we hadn't postponed again, I had everything in place. Elliot's career was in shambles. He'd lost his last 3 major clients and was seriously considering
going back to work for someone else, which he'd always sworn he'd never do. He was behind on rent, stressed constantly, and had started drinking more than was healthy. Sarah was a wreck of guilt and confusion. Our relationship had never been better on the surface, but she was falling apart inside. She'd started seeing a therapist, had lost weight, wasn't sleeping well. And me, I was thriving. The major fraud case had concluded successfully, with me receiving praise from senior leadership and a significant promotion. I'd been made senior forensic analyst, youngest person at the firm to achieve that title. My salary had nearly doubled. From the outside, I was the picture of success, while my best friend and fiancée struggled. But I wasn't done. The final phase of my plan required something bigger, something that would expose them, humiliate them, and ensure they understood exactly what they'd lost. I began planning the wedding again. I brought it up with Sarah over dinner at that same Italian restaurant where she'd asked to postpone the first time. "I've been thinking," I said, "maybe we should set a new date." She looked up from her pasta, eyes wide. "What?" "For the wedding. We've been engaged for almost 3 years now. I think it's time." "Cameron, I don't know if I'm ready." "I know you have doubts, but I think that's normal. Cold feet is a thing for a reason, right?" I reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Sarah. I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. And I think you want that too, underneath all the fear." Tears welled in her eyes. "I do want that. But I'm scared I'm not good enough for you, that I'll disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me." The lie came so easily now. "What if we set a date for next spring, April? That's 6 months away. Plenty of time to plan, but not so far that we can overthink it." She hesitated, and I could see the war playing out behind her eyes. The guilt, the desire to come clean, the fear of losing me, the pull toward Elliot. "Okay," she whispered finally. "April." I smiled and squeezed her hand. "You've made me so happy." She cried through the rest of dinner, and I comforted her, and when she checked her phone in the bathroom, I knew she was texting Elliot. Sure enough, when I checked her phone later that night, there it was. "He wants to set a date. April, what am I going to do?" "Do you want to marry him?" "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." "Then tell him no." "I can't. It'll kill him. You know how much he's been through." "What about what we've been through? What about us?" "There is no us, Elliot. There can't be. He's your best friend." This was a mistake. "Don't say that. Please don't say that." "I have to. This has to end." "Sarah, I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore. We have to stop." I waited to feel satisfaction at driving a wedge between them. Instead, I felt only emptiness. They tried to end it. I'll give them credit for that. For about 3 weeks, their messages stopped. Elliot started dating someone else, a graphic designer named Rachel, who seemed nice enough. Sarah threw herself into wedding planning with almost manic enthusiasm. I played along, tried on tuxedos with Elliot as my best man, visited venues with Sarah, registered for gifts, sent out save the dates. But I knew it wouldn't last. They'd been playing with fire for too long to just walk away. Sure enough, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, they slipped. I came home early from work, again, intentionally, and found them in our apartment, on our couch, kissing like drowning people gasping for air. They didn't see me at first. I stood in the doorway and watched them for probably 30 seconds. Watched Elliot's hands in Sarah's hair. Watched the desperate, hungry way they reached for each other. Then Sarah opened her eyes and saw me. She gasped and pushed Elliot away. They both stood, faces pale, words tumbling out in an incoherent rush. I held up my hand. "Stop!" They stopped. I walked past them into the kitchen, pulled a beer from the fridge and leaned against the counter. "How long?" I asked, taking a slow sip. "Cameron," Sarah started. "How long?" 8 months, Elliot said quietly. 8 months? I nodded slowly. That's quite a while." "We didn't mean for it to happen," Sarah said, crying now. "We tried to stop. We did stop, but—" "But you love each other." They both flinched at the words. "Do you?" I asked, looking between them. "Love each other?" "Yes," Elliot said after a long moment. "I'm sorry, Cam, I'm so fucking sorry, but yes." I turned to Sarah. "And you? Do you love him?" She was sobbing now, but she nodded. "Yes." "More than me?" "I don't know. I love you both, just differently." "But you want to be with him?" Another nod. I finished my beer and set the bottle down carefully. "Okay? Okay?" Elliot looked confused. "Okay."
You want to be together, so be together. Cameron, please. Sarah reached for me. I stepped back. Don't. I need you both to leave, now. This is my apartment too, Elliot said. No, it's my apartment. Your name isn't on the lease. You've been paying me rent, remember? Consider yourself evicted. I want you gone by the end of the week. Cam, can we please talk about this? There's nothing to talk about. You both made your choices. Now live with them. I grabbed my keys. I'm going out. When I come back, I want both of you gone. I walked out without looking back. I drove to Mount Tabor, our spot, mine and Elliot's. I climbed to the top and sat looking out over the city lights just like we used to. And for the first time since I'd discovered their affair, let myself really feel it. The pain was extraordinary, physical, like something vital had been ripped from my chest. I'd known for months, had read their messages, followed them, documented their betrayal. But
knowing intellectually and having them confirm it to my face were two different things. Elliot loved Sarah. Sarah loved Elliot more than they loved me, or maybe just differently, in a way that made me irrelevant. 15 years of friendship, 3 years of planning a future, all of it obliterated. I sat on that hill and cried until I couldn't breathe, great, heaving sobs that tore out of me like exorcisms. When I was empty, I wiped my face and checked my phone. 17 missed calls from Elliot, 12 from Sarah, dozens of texts, all variations on "I'm sorry" and "please let us explain." I blocked both their numbers. Then I called Richard Gallagher, my boss. "Richard, it's Cameron Hayes." "Hayes? It's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "I need to throw myself into work. Completely. Whatever you've got, however brutal, I'll take it." "What happened?" "My fiancée was fucking my best friend. I just found out." A long pause. "Jesus, kid, I'm sorry." "Don't be. Just give me work." "I've got something. Big pharmaceutical company, suspected kickback scheme. It's going to be ugly and long." "Perfect. When do I start?" "Monday. But Hayes, take a few days first. Process this." "The work is how I process." "Okay, Monday it is." I hung up and sat in the silence. Phase 1 was complete. I'd confirmed the betrayal, ended the relationships, removed them from my life. Now came Phase 2, total destruction. Over the next 3 months, I became a ghost. I moved to a different apartment, a sterile 1-bedroom in northwest Portland where no memories lived. I changed my number. I deleted my social media accounts. I focused entirely on work and my plan. I knew through mutual friends that Sarah and Elliot had gotten together officially. They were trying to make it work despite the guilt and the judgment from our friend group. Most people sided with me, but a few understood that feelings were complicated and people made mistakes. I didn't care about
sides, I cared about execution. The first major blow came in January. Remember how I'd been subtly sabotaging Elliot's career? That had just been the groundwork. Now I went nuclear. Through my work connections, I'd become friendly with the head of the Oregon Board of Architect Examiners, the organization that licenses architects in the state. Over drinks one night, I mentioned that I'd heard troubling things about an architect cutting corners on safety inspections to save costs. "That's serious," he said. "We'd need to investigate." Of course, I wouldn't want to make accusations without evidence. If you have evidence, Hayes, you have a duty to report it. I did have evidence because I'd created it. Over the previous months, I'd carefully constructed a paper trail suggesting Elliot had falsified structural calculations on several of his freelance projects. I'd accessed his computer, still had keys to his old place where he'd moved his stuff, and altered some files. Not
enough that anyone would notice unless they were looking, but enough that if someone was looking, they'd find serious violations. I submitted an anonymous complaint to the board. Within 2 weeks, Elliot was under investigation. His license was suspended pending review. Every project he was working on was halted. His reputation was destroyed overnight. I knew this would devastate him. Architecture was his identity, his dream, the one thing he'd worked toward his entire adult life. I didn't care. Sarah was harder to destroy professionally, so I focused on her personally. I created a fake email account and sent messages to Sarah's mother. a deeply religious woman who'd always been ambivalent about Sarah's relationship with me because I wasn't particularly religious. The email detailed Sarah's affair, how she'd cheated on her fiancé with his best friend, how she'd lied and snuck around, how she'd shown such deep moral corruption. Sarah's mother called her immediately. The steady conversation, I learned later through mutual friends, was brutal. Her mother told Sarah she was ashamed of her, that she'd raised her better than this, that she needed to examine her relationship with God. Sarah's parents refused to speak to her for months. Her father, who'd been planning to walk her down the aisle, told her he wanted nothing to do with her. I also ensured that certain people at the newspaper where Sarah worked learned about the affair. Not through direct contact, too risky, but through careful social engineering, letting information slip to people who I knew would gossip. The newsroom was small. Everyone knew everyone. And now everyone knew that Sarah Mitchell had destroyed her relationship by sleeping with her fiancé's best friend. She didn't lose her job, but she lost respect, lost friendships, became the subject of whispered conversations and pitying looks. By March, they were both in ruins. Elliot had lost his architecture license. He was working at a bookstore to pay rent, living in a studio apartment, drowning in debt from lawyer fees, trying to fight the board's decision. Sarah was isolated at work, estranged from her family, and struggling with severe depression and anxiety, and they were fighting constantly. Because that's what happens when you build a relationship on betrayal and lies. It curdles under pressure. I knew all this because I'd kept tabs on them. Not directly, I never contacted them, but through friends who still talk to both sides. Elliot's in bad shape, my friend Marcus told me over drinks. He thinks someone sabotaged him with the board, but he can't figure out who or why. That's rough, I said, sipping my whiskey. Sarah's not much better. Her parents won't talk to her, and she's convinced everyone at the paper hates her. Well, she did cheat on her fiancé with his best friend. Yeah, but people make mistakes. Seems like she's paying for it pretty heavily. Some mistakes deserve heavy consequences. Marcus looked at me carefully. You doing okay, Cam, with all this? I'm great. Best I've been in years, actually. You seem different. I am different. I'm focused, clear. I know exactly what matters and what doesn't. That's good, I guess. But he looked worried when he said it. In April, what would have been our wedding month, I decided it was time for the final act. I arranged for a package to be delivered to both Sarah and Elliot, separate packages delivered on the same day. Inside each package was a photo album. The album contained every piece of evidence I'd collected over the past year, printed screenshots of their text messages, photos of them together that I'd taken while following them, receipts from hotels and restaurants, a complete timeline of their affair. But the last page of each album was the same. A photo of them kissing on my couch the day I'd caught them. I'd actually taken it that day before they'd noticed me. They looked so desperate, so hungry for each other. Beneath the photo I'd written, "You destroyed my life for this. Was it worth it?" And then a URL. The URL led to a private website I'd created. On it, I'd published everything. The full timeline of their affair, all the messages, all the evidence. I'd also written a detailed account from my perspective, how I'd discovered the betrayal, how they'd lied to my face for months, how they'd let me plan a wedding that would never happen. I'd sent the link to everyone we knew mutually, Friends, family, former co-workers, everyone. I wanted the world to see exactly who they were and what they'd done. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Sarah's parents, who'd already been estranged, completely cut her off. Her father sent a single text, "You are no longer my daughter." Her remaining friends abandoned her. Who wants to be associated with someone whose betrayal is documented in such excruciating detail for everyone to see? The newspaper where she worked asked her to resign. The publicity was too much, too damaging to the paper's reputation. Elliot's family stopped talking to him. His younger brother, Tyler, who'd always looked up to him, sent him a message saying he was disgusted by what Elliot had done. Elliot's appeal to the Board of Architect Examiners was denied. His professional reputation was completely destroyed, and their relationship? It imploded, because when you base a relationship on sneaking around and forbidden passion, exposing it to harsh light tends to kill whatever was there. They fought about whose fault it was that I'd found out, fought about the website, fought about what to do next, fought about everything. Within 3 weeks of the website going live, they'd broken up. Elliot moved back in with his dad in Seattle. Last I heard, he was working retail and had given up on architecture entirely. Sarah moved to a different city, I think Boston, where her sister lived, tried to
start over somewhere people didn't know her story. I'd won. Completely and utterly destroyed both of them. So why did I feel so empty? It's been 5 years since all of this happened. I'm 32 now, a partner at Bridgewater Associates, one of the most respected forensic accountants in the Pacific Northwest. I make more money than I know what to do with. I have a beautiful apartment, a nice car, all the markers of success. I've dated occasionally, but nothing serious. It's hard to trust people when you've seen what I've seen, done what I've done. I took the website down after 6 months, not out of mercy, but because it had served its purpose. The damage was already done. I haven't spoken to Elliot or Sarah since the day I caught them. I have no idea if they've tried to contact me. I changed my number and email, moved several times. Sometimes I wonder if what I did was justice or just revenge, if there's even a difference. They betrayed me, yes, lied to me for months, made a fool of me, but did they deserve to have their lives completely destroyed? I tell myself yes. Tell myself they made their choices and I simply revealed the truth of those choices to the world. But late at night, lying in my expensive bed in my empty apartment, I'm not so sure. Because here's what I learned. Revenge is a hollow victory. Destroying them didn't heal me. It didn't bring back the friendship or the relationship. It didn't erase the betrayal or the pain. It just created more destruction, more pain, more emptiness. I became the very thing I hated, someone who methodically hurt the people who trusted them. Maybe I was worse, because at least their betrayal came from love, however misguided. Mine came from hate. 3 months ago, I received a letter. It had been forwarded through several addresses before reaching me. Sarah must have worked hard to track me down. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity won. The letter was simple. Cameron, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know you might not even read this, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. I know those words don't mean much after what I did, after what we did, but I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret it. I didn't plan to fall in love with Elliot. It just happened. And instead of being honest with you, I took the coward's way out. I lied to you, betrayed your trust. and hurt you in the worst possible way, you had every right to be angry, every right to cut us out of your life. But what you did after Cameron, it destroyed us. Not just our reputations or careers, but who we were as people. Elliot had a breakdown. He was hospitalized for 3 months. He's on disability now, can barely leave his apartment. The investigation, the website, losing everything, it broke something in him. I'm not much better. I've been in therapy for years, trying to rebuild some sense of self, trying to forgive myself for what I did to you and trying to understand what you did to us. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not even asking you to feel sorry for us. We brought this on ourselves. I just need you to know that I'm sorry, that I loved you, truly, and I destroyed something beautiful because I was weak and selfish. I hope you found happiness. I hope you found peace. I hope you found someone who deserves the love and loyalty you gave me. And I hope someday you can forgive yourself for what you did to us, because I think that's the only way any of us move forward. Take care, Sarah. I read that letter sitting at my kitchen counter with a glass of whiskey I didn't remember pouring. Elliot had been hospitalized, was on disability, couldn't leave his apartment. I'd broken him, just like I'd set out to do. I should have felt satisfaction, victory, justice served. Instead, I felt sick. I burned the letter, threw it in the fireplace, and watched it curl into
ash, but her words stayed with me. I hope someday you can forgive yourself for what you did to us. Can I? Should I? They betrayed me first, lied to me, made me question my sanity, let me plan a future that was built on their deception. But I took that betrayal and weaponized it. I didn't just end the relationships, I systematically destroyed their lives, sabotaged Elliot's career, isolated Sarah from everyone she loved, published their private messages for the world to judge. I became a monster in the name of justice, and now I sit here, successful and alone, wondering if I won anything at all. Last week, I drove past that old basketball court where Elliot and I first met. It's been renovated, new concrete, new hoop, fresh paint on the lines. I sat in my car and watched some kids play, two teenage boys laughing and talking shit, playing with the kind of easy camaraderie Elliot and I once had. I wondered if one of them would betray the other someday, if they'd discover that the person they trusted most in the world was capable of unthinkable deception. And I wondered what they'd do when they found out. Would they take the high road, cut ties, move on, build a better life? Or would they take my road, methodical destruction, scorched earth, mutual assured devastation? I hope they never have to find out. And there's a photo I kept from before everything fell apart. It's the only one. It's from a trip we took to Mount Hood, the three of us, me, Elliot, and Sarah. We're standing at the summit, arms around each other, squinting into the sun. We look so happy, so full of potential and hope and love. I keep it in my desk drawer, don't look at it often. But sometimes, on the hard days, I pull it out, and I try to remember who I was before the betrayal, before the revenge, before I learned exactly what I was capable of when someone hurt me. I try to remember the Cameron Hayes who believed in friendship and love and trust, but he's gone.
destroyed just as completely as I destroyed Elliot and Sarah. There are no winners in this story, just three broken people who hurt each other until there was nothing left. I got a message last month through LinkedIn from Elliot's brother, Tyler. I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted you to know Elliot's in the hospital again, tried to kill himself. He's alive, but it's bad. I know what happened between you guys. I know he betrayed you, and I know you had every right to be angry. But this has to stop. He's destroyed. Sarah's destroyed. And from what I can see, so are you. Please, just let it go. Haven't you all suffered enough? I stared at that message for 3 days before responding. Tell Elliot I hope he recovers, and tell him I'm sorry too. Because I am. Not sorry for exposing the truth, not sorry for ending the relationships, but sorry for how far I took it, for the website, for systematically dismantling their lives, for becoming someone I don't recognize. I don't know if that apology means anything. I don't know if it's enough or too little or too late. I just know I'm tired. Tired of the anger, tired of the emptiness, tired of winning a war where everyone lost. I've been thinking about Sarah's letter, about forgiveness, not forgiving them. I did that a long time ago, though I never told them. Forgave them because holding on to that betrayal was poisoning me more than it hurt them. But forgiving myself, that's harder. How do I forgive myself for what I did? For the calculated cruelty? For destroying two people I once loved? My therapist, yes, I have one now, started seeing her about a year ago, says that forgiveness starts with understanding why we do what we do. I destroyed them because I was in pain, because I felt powerless, because making them hurt was the only way I knew to process my own hurt. It doesn't excuse it, doesn't make it right, but it makes it human. We're all capable of terrible things when we're broken, when we're scared and angry and desperate to feel something other than powerless. They broke me. I broke them. And now we're all just broken. I don't know how to end this story. There's no neat resolution, no moment of catharsis where everything makes sense. I destroyed the people who betrayed me, and the destruction didn't fix anything, didn't heal me, didn't bring back what I lost. It just created more wreckage. If I could go back and do it differently, would I? I honestly don't know. Part of me says yes, that I should have been the bigger person, should have walked away with dignity, should have let their guilt and the natural consequences be punishment enough. But another part of me, the part that remembers the months of lies and gaslighting and humiliation, says they got what they deserved. Maybe both things are true. Maybe they deserved to face consequences for their betrayal. And maybe I became someone just as bad in my pursuit of
Those consequences. I'm writing this down not as a confession or a justification, not as a warning or a cautionary tale. I'm writing it down because I need to acknowledge what happened, what I did, who I became. I need to look at it clearly without the rage or the pain or the justifications and decide how to move forward, because I can't live like this anymore. Can't sit alone in my expensive apartment, successful and empty, winning a war that destroyed everyone involved. I need to figure out how to be human again, how to trust again, how to love again, how to forgive, not just them, but myself. I don't know if that's possible, don't know if I deserve it, but I'm going to try, because the alternative is spending the rest of my life as the thing I became, a weapon forged in betrayal, sharp and deadly and completely hollow. And I think I've been that person long enough. This morning, I drafted 2 emails, one to Sarah, one to Elliot. I haven't sent them yet. Don't know if I will. They just say, I'm sorry for everything. I hope you're finding peace. It's not enough. Could never be enough after what I did. But it's a start. Maybe. I look at those unsent emails and I think about that photo from Mount Hood. 3 people who loved each other, arms around each other, smiling at the summit. We'll never be those people again, can never go back to that moment of untarnished trust and possibility. But maybe we can all stop being the monsters we became. Maybe we can all find some way to heal and move forward and forgive. Or maybe we can't. Maybe this is just who we are now. Broken people carrying broken pieces, trying to build something from the wreckage. I don't know. All I know is that the weight of what we did to each other, what I did to them, is crushing me. And I'm ready to put it down. If you're reading this and you've been betrayed, if someone you love has destroyed your trust and made a fool of you, I
understand your rage. I understand a desire to hurt them the way they hurt you. But I'm telling you, don't go down the road I went down. Not because they don't deserve it. Maybe they do. But because you deserve better than becoming what I became. You deserve to heal, to move forward, to build a life that isn't defined by someone else's betrayal. Revenge might feel satisfying in the moment, might feel like justice or righteousness or taking back control, but it's a lie. All it does is create more pain, more destruction, more emptiness. Be angry, grieve, cut them out of your life if you need to, but don't let them turn you into something you'll hate, because that's the real victory for them, making you compromise yourself in pursuit of hurting them. I don't know if Elliot will survive this. Don't know if he'll recover from his suicide attempt, if he'll ever rebuild his life, if he'll find any peace. I don't know if Sarah will ever reconcile with her family, ever trust herself in a relationship again, ever stop feeling the weight of her choices. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to look in the mirror without seeing the person who methodically destroyed two people he once loved. But I'm going to try to find out. I'm going to send those emails, going to apologize, really apologize, without expecting forgiveness or absolution. I'm going to keep going to therapy, keep working on myself, keep trying to understand how I became this person and how to become someone better. I'm going to take that photo from Mount Hood and put it somewhere I can see it every day, not as a reminder of what I lost, but as a reminder of who I was before everything broke. And maybe, if I'm very lucky and work very hard, I'll find a way back to some version of that person. Not the naive Cameron who thought friendship and love were simple and unconditional, but a wiser Cameron who understands that people are complicated and messy and capable of both profound love
and profound betrayal. A Cameron who knows his own capacity for darkness, but chooses light anyway. It's been 5 years since I found that envelope in the attic, since I discovered the truth and watched my world burn. 5 years of success and emptiness and revenge and regret. I thought destroying them would destroy the pain. I was wrong. The only thing it destroyed was me. But maybe it's not too late to rebuild. Maybe we all get a second chance at becoming human, even me, especially me. I click send on both emails, and then I sit in the silence of my empty apartment and wait for forgiveness, for peace, for some sign that redemption is possible. I might wait forever, but at least I'm finally waiting for something other than revenge. And that, I think, is a start.